Participants of this year's session of the Shangri-La Dialogue. First of all, it is indeed a great honor for me to once again be invited to speak in this important assembly of distinguished leaders in the defense and security fields of not only the Indo-Pacific region, but also from all over the world. We see today in this meeting many ministers, many leaders, many defense and security officials, not only from this region, but from the Americas, from Europe, from the Middle East. This shows how important events like this Shangri-La Dialogue has become. I totally agree with some previous speakers that consider meetings like the Shangri-La Dialogue to be important platforms for the exchange of views, personal contacts, discreet conversations, private meetings, which are all important ways to diffuse tension, overcome misunderstandings, and create a confidence-building environment. We all, I think, agree that this world, that our Earth, has become a small planet. And we are, all of us, facing common global threats to our security and our livelihood. We have together just overcome. We have just managed to mitigate the near disastrous COVID-19 pandemic. Even at this time, experts in the medical fields and the field of microbiology warn us not to lessen our guard against these global biological threats. My friends in the medical field warn me that there are now new mutations of the original COVID-19 virus appearing again. Distinguished friends, participants. These are but a few examples, some examples of the universal threats, that we will face, all of us, in this small planet of ours. Also, experts warn us that we face, in the near future, in this 21st century, crisis in energy, in water, and of course, in food supply and food security. It is imperative for us to overcome our geopolitical rivalries, our territorial disputes, through dialogue, negotiations, and win-win solutions. The Asian tradition of compromise is, I think, not really only an Asian tradition. Historically, compromise is the only way that communities and societies can prosper. Distinguished friends, the adagium that might makes right actually is not an eternal adagium. When there's a mighty power, there usually will come a mightier power in the neighborhood. That is the history of mankind. The history of mankind teaches us that compromise and coexistence is the only viable route to prosperity. Therefore, in the context of tensions in our part of the world and in the Indo-Pacific region, and also in other parts of the world, I myself actually have a more optimistic outlook. Let us be very open. The security situation in the Indo-Pacific, especially in Asia, in East Asia, is one dominated primarily by the tensions rising from the rise of China to become again a great world power. And this is interfaced with the United States' role as a preeminent global power. History teaches us when a rising great power meets a preeminent global power, tensions do arise, and the historical record shows many of these conflicts result in open conflict, kinetic conflict. However, this rivalry, some have suggested, is turned into a new Cold War. It is being called the Second Cold War. And in this so-called new Cold War, as in all wars, whether hot or cold, the danger of catastrophe is always near. Especially in this age of ours, this age of advanced science and technology, of artificial intelligence, quantum leaps, in new discoveries, in new technologies. In this age, any confrontation of force can very quickly result in a dangerous descent to disaster. I've been told by experts in Indonesia, even if Indonesia is not involved in any open conflict, if there is a nuclear war, the difference between those directly involved and Indonesia is we will die a slower death, but we will suffer as well. However, I am of the opinion that the leaders of the two leading powers in this great rivalry are actually wise leaders. I am of the opinion that they are aware of the burden they have on their shoulders. I am sure they must feel the weight of this burden. They are also very aware of the great history of their nations and their civilizations. China has a long and great history, maybe the longest recorded history of mankind. China has been and will surely continue to be a great civilization. The United States is also part of the Western civilization. This Western civilization has also given humankind Renaissance and the Enlightenment. Science, new discoveries that have improved the livelihood of humankind. Both these great civilizations, the Chinese civilization and the Western civilization at present now being led by the United States, have contributed to the great advance and progress of humankind. Therefore, I am convinced that the leaders of both China and the United States and the West will resolve these conflicts through compromise, cooperation, and with humanism, resulting in a peaceful resolution of their differences. I am confident that through leadership and wisdom, great statesmanship will prevail amongst the leaders of these great powers. Perhaps I can be considered one of the eternal optimists, but I do not deny that I'm an optimist, because the only alternative to an optimistic view is one that I do not dare to consider. This is, I think, not only my hope, but the hope of many around the world. I would like now also to address the conflict in Europe. That is Ukraine-Russian conflict. I address this because I see many of our European friends present here in this forum. Yes, the Shangri-La dialogue has been in the past focused primarily on the Indo-Pacific region. But the presence of so many of our friends from Europe testify to the fact that security in the Indo-Pacific is affected by security and the situation in Europe, and vice versa. As I said, our planet has become smaller. What happens in Ukraine affects the livelihood of all the peoples of the world. The price of energy has gone up. The price of food has gone up. This has resulted in much suffering for many peoples of the world. Therefore, I would like to put forward the proposition that is not out of context for us to try to contribute to the resolution of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I therefore would like to take this opportunity to urge, to recommend with utmost urgency for our brothers in Ukraine and in Russia to come as soon as possible to a cessation of hostilities. I propose that the Shangri-La dialogue find a mode of declaration urging both Ukraine and Russia to immediately start negotiations for peace. This declaration should be voluntary from all participants here representing their various countries. But I propose the general outline of the peace plan as follows. First, a ceasefire in place. That is, a cessation of hostilities in place at the present positions of both conflicting parties. Two, withdrawal 15 kilometers each from their forward positions to a new demilitarized zone. Three, the United Nations Monitoring and Observer Force to be immediately formed and to be immediately deployed along this new demilitarized zone. Five, the United Nations should organize, carry out, and execute a referendum in the disputed territories to ascertain objectively the wish of the majority of the inhabitants of the various disputed areas. And I would like to declare at this present moment that Indonesia is prepared to contribute military observers and military units under the peacekeeping auspices of the United Nations. These steps, I think, has proven in history to be effective. Let us not here put blame on any side. There are always two versions to any conflict. Both sides feel strongly of their righteousness. But for the security of the world, for the safety of the innocent, we have to achieve cessation of hostilities as soon as possible. Refer to historical examples. In Korea, a big and massive conflict was resolved by a cessation of hostilities and a demilitarized zone. Yes, the conflict in Korea has still to be resolved permanently. However, for at least 5 decades, we have had some sort of peace, which is much better than the massive destruction and the killings of many innocent people. Distinguished participants, I do not know if my proposals can be accepted, but at least let us try to put forward some concrete recommendations so that meetings like the Shangri-La dialogue will have more substance, more meaning, and can prove to be a platform that can contribute to the diffusion and de-escalation of armed conflict. Once again, because our planet has become smaller, it is more imperative for us to achieve peace. Thank you.